You feel like you constantly have to chase and grind in order to get the things that you want in your life? Today, we're going to talk about a way to flip that paradigm where instead you can start to receive things in your life, that things will naturally come to you rather than you having to chase them. This is something that I practice in my personal life and also something that I help clients cultivate in theirs. My name is Sean. I'm a mental health coach. I see 40 plus clients a week. I have a 98% satisfaction rating from over 1,500 ratings. And today we're going to talk about two different things. We're going to talk about radical acceptance and receiving, and we're going to talk about intuition. And through these two things, we're going to help you to receive more in your life so that life can be more easeful and you don't have to work so hard. So let's start by talking about radical acceptance or receiving. So I'll start with a story. When I was younger, I felt like I was putting a lot of good out into the world and wasn't receiving anything back, or at least not as much as I felt like I was putting out. And what really shifted that paradigm for me was this idea of radical acceptance and receiving. And here's sort of how it looks in my life. So what I have learned is that the universe sort of rewards action, but the way that it rewards that action is variable. So what I mean by this is I sort of picture it like we have our compass, which I'll talk more about what the heck your compass means in a second when we talk about intuition. But we have our compass, and there are all of these like tentacles coming out of the compass, and they're reaching out in all sorts of different directions, doing all sorts of different things. And what ends up happening is that eventually, as you do that, one of the tentacles ends up bringing something back. But again, it's never exactly what you expect. So let me explain what the heck I mean by this. So I will, for instance, in my business, take all sorts of actions to figure out how to find new clients, because that's, something that's necessary in order for my business to work. And oftentimes I will, I'll do advertising, I'll reach out to people, I'll do all sorts of things to find new clients. And oftentimes what ends up happening is that the clients that actually find me come out of left field. They have nothing to do with the actions that I was taking. But I still attribute those actions to being responsible for creating the opportunity for clients to find me. And so in that way, the universe, I had all of these different tentacles in all of these different directions, and then the universe naturally sort of brings something to me based on those actions, as long as they are aligned with my compass. So that's how I experience this radical receiving, is I take intuitive action, and the important part is the action that I am taking. The results actually I'm not even thinking about them. I just take the actions. And the universe sort of takes care of the results by themselves, and they often don't look like what I expect them to look like. But there's another half of this, which is radical acceptance. And for me, the place that radical acceptance shows up the most in my life is in my relationships. So when I was younger, I remember that I would be hyper logical during conversations, that I would pick out all of the little flaws and errors in people's conversations. And if I thought that they were wrong, then I didn't care about what they had to say because I was right. And what I learned is that that results in miserable relationships, and nobody likes being around that guy. So instead, what I have started to do now is I listen for the underlying needs that are being expressed in what people are saying. And that is how I personally have found radical acceptance. Because even though I may not like the way that someone is communicating with me, or I may not like the dynamic that currently exists between me and another person, I understand underlying needs. And so when somebody expresses something to me in a way that hurts my feelings, I can take the time to think about like, okay, yes, that absolutely hurt me. I can acknowledge my own feelings and experience. But what is it that they're really saying? Why is it that they're saying this sort of thing to me? And in having an understanding of that, I can then work to address that with them. I can say, oh, okay, I think that this is happening within our dynamic. So, for example, I had a conversation with my brother recently where I ended up hurting his feelings because I made him feel judged in the way that I had expressed something. And by acknowledging that the way that I expressed something, I could understand how it would make him feel judged, it allowed us to repair that dynamic without, I could have said, well, it's just the truth. That's just how it is. But that doesn't do anything useful for our relationship. And so instead, by acknowledging that and accepting his experience, it helped us to grow in our relationship. So earlier, when I was talking about my weird tentacle analogy, I talked about our compass, which is another word for our intuition. There are lots of different ways to describe it. Pick whichever one works for you. But by getting in touch with our intuition, it allows us to sort of naturally know the next step to take rather than constantly having to doubt if we're doing the right thing. It is such a huge relief when it's just like, yeah, this is what feels right. I know that this is where I'm going to go. And it's not like that path doesn't change. It's not like you always go in a straight line. In fact, oftentimes, almost always, it is a curvy, wavy line, and that's okay. But the way that we get in touch with our intuition, the good news is that you actually don't have to go and get your intuition. Everyone has a natural intuition. It's just about tuning into it. And the tricky part about that, what makes it hard to tune into your intuition, is that we have so many other influences in our lives with technology and all of that. We are constantly inundated with external stimuli. And it is loud stimuli, very purposefully. Like a good example of this is when you're watching TV, the show is one volume and the commercials are a way, way louder volume because they know that by being loud, it has more influence on you. They don't do this stuff by mistake. And the same thing is true with our, TikToks and Instagrams and all that sort of thing. It is constant stimulus that is very loud that makes it hard for us to hear our intuition because intuition whispers. Intuition speaks very, very quietly. And so oftentimes what people end up following are the louder things, whether that is external stimuli or even internal stuff like fear and anger, things like that, emotions that speak very, very loudly. And this is why intentional practice of taking time where you just tune in to what is going on for you, taking time to, it doesn't even have to be like meditation. If you like meditation, by all means, I fully endorse meditation. But if meditation doesn't feel right for you, just taking quiet time to sort of introspect and reflect can be incredibly valuable and help you get in touch with your intuition. Another obstacle that can get in the way of being able to tune into our intuition is when we are taught to people please. And this shows up in all sorts of different ways, but essentially what it looks like is feeling obligated to do things, having all of these shoulds in your head that make you shrink yourself down and ignore your own signals in order to do what everyone tells you you're supposed to do. This can lead to such tragic outcomes. I hear people talk all the time about, they'll say things like, I knew that something wasn't right, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to come across as a bitch. And it's one of the reasons that I am so passionate about helping to empower people so that they feel safe and comfortable to make a choice for themselves when they know something isn't right. If you want help allowing things to come to you rather than having to constantly chase them through these ideas of like radical acceptance, radical receiving, intuition, there's a link below where you can schedule a free 50-minute session with me. And both of the concepts that I talked about today are actually aspects of the feminine, which is something that is a huge part of my practice and the way that I help people. A lot of it is about helping people to get in touch with the femininity within them. Now, don't worry, if you're a guy, that's totally fine. We all have some mix of masculine and feminine within us. And this video that'll either pop up here or down the description, depending on where you're watching this, is sort of like the part 1 of this video. It goes into more detail about how to find a natural rhythm that works for you rather than the sort of 9 to 5 grind that is encouraged. I hope it helps, and I'll see you next time. Bye.